All right. Well, without further ado, I'd love to introduce a friend of mine. She's the chief of police over at Jackson Police Department in Wyoming, and I knew Michelle when she was a sergeant, and so it's nice to see the progress of her career and her professionalism and the things that she brings to her community where she's from. And so Michelle has started along this journey to develop a mindfulness-based attention training program, and I'd love to give her and Tony and Jeremiah, her sergeants, a chance to share this with us. So, Michelle, thank you for being here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we will turn this over to you so that way you could share yours. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Dara, for the invitation. I'm Michelle Weber. I'm the Chief of Police of the Jackson Police Department in Jackson, Wyoming. If y'all haven't been here, we'd love to have you visit. I have with me Sergeant Tony Matthews, who is our support operations sergeant, and then Sergeant Jeremiah Perry, who's one of our patrol sergeants. And we are 3 of 4 members of our what we call mindfulness team. And we're here just to share with you our program and where we were and where we've come and where we hope to go in the next few years. So thank you. I will start by telling you a little bit, if you all have any questions along the way, is there a way, Dr. Dara, for them to raise their hand and ask questions during, or are we going to wait to the end?
Yes, there will be, and we also have the chat in here that they could type their questions into. Thank you for reminding me the entire time they could type in their questions in chat.
Great, thank you.
We'll let you know.
And so we are a mid-sized department. We started out as a small department a couple of years ago, and we've really grown. We have 33 sworn officers, and that includes between 2 and 3 reserve officers, and then a total of 50 employees, which encompasses victim services, our animal shelter, and our community service division. And about three to 4 years ago, we were in a state of turmoil. I would say we lost almost half of our department within just a couple of years to turnover, mostly to other agencies nearby. And then fast forward a couple years to August of 2020, we lost our top 2 administrative staff, our chief and our lieutenant, unexpectedly within a 24-hour period, at which point I was appointed the interim chief, and it was expected, but not the way it turned out. And so we were definitely in turmoil in August of 2020, to say the least. And the day that I was appointed, I love to tell this story because I had been a part of what was called mindfulness-based attention training with Sarah Flintner, and she is a local part of a director of a local nonprofit that wants to introduce mindfulness to our community. I had been a part of her program for a couple years, and she, did her best to try to engage me, if you will. And so when I took over as the interim chief, I looked at Tony and I said, Tony, I'd really like you to do this mindfulness-based attention training. It's a 7-month program. And he walked in my office. I had that conversation with him, and he literally turned away and walked out and said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, I'm not interested. And a few seconds later, he came back in and he said, okay, Chief, what can I do? I'm happy to do it. And I'll let Tony tell you his story, but I will just start by saying he wasn't overly excited about engaging in mindfulness training because he, didn't, for lack of a better word, he didn't understand what it was. And so over the next 7 months, he realized the benefits from it. So that's kind of where we started. And my goal was to change the culture here in our department. I told you we had extensive turnover, and I wanted to see people more engaged in our department and want to be here. And I will, you know, without tooting my own horn necessarily, but we have come a long way in a couple years, and we've had very, very little turnover. We are completely fully staffed in our department, and have a waiting list, if you will, for people who are interested in our patrol positions. So I'm super excited about that. We also are in the process of hiring a social worker, which is in background, and we will be the first department in our the state of Wyoming that has a social worker attached to our police department. And we're fortunate enough that this person is a retired police officer who is now interested in social work and has her master's degree in social work. So in my mind, that was like the perfect applicant. And I will tell you that it has taken a year and a half to get that perfect applicant, but I'm really, really excited about this person coming on board, hopefully in the next couple months. So I looked for a program that would encompass a lot of different things. You know, the science has told us that, you know, there's different disciplines and different practices that can cultivate mindfulness. So it doesn't have to be necessarily meditation. And so I'm looking at it as a, you know, an all around encompassing program. And so we've called it Creating Officers with and Enforced Psychological Strength. And it's interesting how we came upon that title is that we put it out for officers to talk about. Well, we had it was originally Creating Officers with and in for, because we couldn't decide what we wanted, if we wanted with, if we wanted and, or if we wanted for. So we put all three in there. Psychological survival is what we originally had it. And interestingly enough, we had a spouse of one of our patrol officers say, we're better, that we want more than survival. We want strength, because that just shows more. And so we thought that that was really powerful, that we were now engaging our spouses to, and so that's how we came up with Creating Officers with and enforced psychological strength. And so I am going to go to the next slide, but our program, when I said it encompasses a bunch of different things, it's mindfulness training, it's peer support. We have a phenomenal peer support program here in Teton County, which includes our police department, the sheriff's office, search and rescue, ski patrol, St. John's Hospital. And part of that program, Laura McGladdy is one of our instructors that has come in and introduced the peer support program here. We use a little app called Group. It's like just a group chat, like on our phones when we have somebody that's in need within one of our departments. And we also have therapists that are a part of that program. So it's really just a tap of a text message, and we're able to connect people with peer support. And I mean, there's so much to the peer support program that, let's see here. Our peer support program is, they go through a couple days of training, and then we have different people within our department who are trained, like Sergeant Matthews is one of them. And so we introduce our peer support program day one that employees are hired on to the Jackson Police Department. They spend about 30 minutes with Tony. So, and he'll probably talk about it more, but so it's not like something new to them when there's a traumatic event. And so when officers have calls for service that are, traumatic or different or what's stressful for them, we use this tool to identify where they fall in the exposure categories. You know, are they good? Are they yellow? Are they red? And they need more help. And I'm just going to forward to the back of it where it gives how we came up with this calculation. And so this card was introduced by members of the peer support team. And we've kind of changed it over time to make it more friendly, easier to use, and just really easier to identify the needs of officers. And so if officers happen to be like in the yellow or maybe nearing the red, I'm going to go back again. We introduce what's called the 333 protocol, which we check in with them three days, 3 weeks, 3 months later, just to make sure that they're doing okay. And again, going back to that, the group app that I told you about, if they need support from therapists, we connect them with that, and it's confidential. And our peer support program is entirely paid for and funded by nonprofits. The Search and Rescue Foundation here in Teton County pays for all the therapists, for all the counselors. Really, it's just as much as they need. So that's really a unique opportunity for us, and we're very proud of that program. And Tony is now a member of a board, and they are going to be growing and creating their own nonprofit board from our peer support program. So I talked about mindfulness, I talked about peer support, and the mindfulness, we've also created a mindfulness room, if you will. We had a very small interrogation room in the police department. And so one of the things that I proposed to our elected officials was to create a soft interview room, which we very desperately needed, but also a mindfulness room for officers to use to go and decompress, if you will, just for 5 or 10 minutes. One of the things that we have in the room is a freshwater fish tank, which, believe it or not, it's funny almost that officers you'll see groups of them of like 3 or 4, like sitting down there every day, like watching the fish. And so that's one way of being mindful, is just spending a few minutes watching the fish go back and forth. And they're very in tune to what's going on in that fish tank. And if a fish dies, Sergeant Peary, who's in charge of that, is made aware of that like almost immediately. So we've done the mindfulness room. We've, I talked about how, there's several different disciplines to mindfulness. Tony will talk a little bit about the meditation that he does with people, but some people like to hike. And so we've had hikes on our mountain. We live in town here where there's a large hill, and we do weekly hikes and spend time talking about just the environment as we're hiking up the hill, and what we can hear, like the birds and the trees and just the sounds of the vehicles in town. A couple of the other things that we've done are team building exercises or programs. We have what's called a Via Ferrata here in Teton Village, where it's a very complex climbing course that our officers went through last year. And this year we did a ropes course, which is a very impressive ropes course that not all of us made it through because it was much harder than it sounds. But if you're ever in Jackson, I would highly encourage you to do the ropes course because it's really fun. But those are some of the things that we have done. And again, it's not just mindfulness stuff. It's not just meditation, right? It's just a whole encompassing program that we call COPS. And I'm gonna let Tony and Jeremiah kind of step in and talk about other things that we have done to incorporate our program.
Good morning. So my name is Jeremiah Peary. I have been in criminal justice for 16 years now, and it was interesting when I started my career. The veterans that I worked with, started their careers in the late 70s and early 80s, and there was this widespread culture of stoic machismo. Basically, we're gonna bottle our feelings inside. You're not going to talk about things that bother you. Just keep on rolling. And as I progressed through my career, I watched that attitude and that that pattern of behavior, that pattern of handling incidences and mental health not working. You know, I had coworkers who would go into mental health crisis, and instead of getting help, or instead of you know, being supported, they would be disciplined and terminated. And it was very, you know, during, you know, that early part of my career, it was, you know, it was one of those things. It's like everyone would just cloister up and pretend everything's okay because they didn't want to get a psychological red flag for saying, hey, you know, that call bothered me, or hey, that death scene, you know, that was disturbing. Or in my individual journey, having one of my coworkers shot on duty, and you know, how he had to re-heal and come back to duty, his process, and how he had very little support for the mental trauma of, you know, losing partial function in an arm. And all of this came to a head in for me personally in 2019, when my former sergeant and mentor, he shot himself. And he was a father of 3. He had been he had 20 years on the job, 8 years in the Marine Corps, and he had bottled up all of his demons and his mental health pressures of having that long of a career, and he did not feel safe to reach out for help, and he self-medicated with alcohol, and it eventually overwhelmed him. And going to that funeral was one of the hardest things I've done in my career. And so when I came back from that, I was like, I know I have to do something in our department. I know I have to be a part of something. I have to reach out, and we have to change our culture. Law enforcement cannot stay in this realm of, you know, stoicism, where we just bottle up everything inside and keep on trucking. And you know, the military has made strides addressing PTSD, and law enforcement and first responders, it's our turn. And so one of the things as an agency, us doing the mindfulness program, is mindfulness became, I was able to identify that mindfulness is a tactical step to helping alleviate and manage someone's personal mental health state. And it's one tool in a tool of many, but this is a journey we have to go on as an industry. We can't stay in the past. And as we have evolved with social justice and evolved with police tactics and technology, we also have to evolve with the way we take care of our officers and our first responders' mental health. And so that's why I believe in this journey. That's why I'm committed to being a part of this for the rest of my career. And I hope that when we bring our next generation of cops on, they will never have to be exposed to a industry where we self-cannibalize ourselves with the stigma of dealing with our mental health. And so that's why I believe in this, and that's why I hope all of you join us in this journey, and let's change our industry.
All right. Hey, Tony Matthews here. I've been with Jackson Police Department for 25 years. And in an attempt not to be redundant and bore you, I'm going to just kind of maybe repeat and summarize a few things that we've gone over. For us and for our department, what we've done is kind of made a program that has is very mobile, and we try to put elements in it that fit the different people. They can learn and adapt to what they do, what works for them. And that works for the generational thing, and we're developing that as a part of our culture. Obviously, as the chief said, as officers come in, as part of their orientation to be introduced to our mindfulness, what mindfulness means to us and our peer support system. And then we run them through, give them the examples, give them a mindfulness is taught by MBAT. But the cool thing is we don't limit it to that. Mindfulness is going to be different for everybody. One of my big things is physiology, and we're trying to create situations where, you know, when everybody else is running away from the fire, we're running to it. And so when we jump in that fire, we want to maintain our physiology so it's not physically and mentally damaging afterwards. So keeping the openness to what works for the officer is huge for us. And that goes back to a little bit to what Jeremiah said about generations. And different generations are going to have different things. Like one of our sergeants who does the super intense hikes up what we call Snow King Mountain, that works for a group of people. Another group is, you know, the podcast. And part of the wonderful things that we have that supports the talk is our officers, all of our employees have the opportunity, if they want, an hour a day to do something related to whatever gets their homeostasis physiology to a state where they feel like they're working on that and strengthening that muscle. We so far in the little over 2 years that we've had a fairly organized program, we've had, of our 50 employees, we've had 22 go through the tips, the 3-through-3 element. And if that's not a testament for somebody who started in 1997 in law enforcement of reducing and removing a stigma associated with self-care and mental health, then I don't know what it is. I will stand up for that every day of the week. I think ultimately our service is to the community, and what can we offer the community. And I don't want to jump on any bandwagons. I don't want to be political, anything like that. We've had several huge events in our country recently in law enforcement that have involved fight, flight, and freeze. And you guys can come up with those, which one those are yourself. But I believe that all of these could have been prevented through a homeostasis and physiology through practicing mindfulness and preparing yourself for each day on the job through this program. So that's just a nutshell. If you got any questions, I'd love to. Oh, and the chief just reminded me, she really loves that I'm a kind of a fact-based guy. And so along with this, and when she asked me to do all this, I wasn't gonna just say, oh yeah, this is wonderful, this is working for me. So I tracked my sleep, my blood pressure. I test my blood pressure every night, and my resting heart rate. My resting heart rate has gone down approximately 5. The big one is my blood pressure has dropped 20 points on both diastolic and systolic, and my sleep has gone way up. Quality of sleep has gone through the roof, probably from generally a high 60s to low 90s. So it's worked for me. I hope you're, from judging from the introductions, there's a lot of super experienced, skilled people who have great resources in their departments And this might just be us introducing our program and what we do, and maybe you letting us feel good about ourselves, but we hope that you have the opportunity to do it, and you already have it. And thank you for your time.
So I am happy to take any questions that might be out there. I saw there were some questions in the chat, and yes, we will certainly be happy to share our resources with you.
Michelle, could you guys comment on some of the maybe the growing pains of this program, buy-in issues, as well as, you know, how long it took to develop it?
Right. So let's just talk about the obvious, right? Like, you know, that's the same reaction that I got from Sergeant Matthews. Initially, some of the members in the department were hesitant to go through the mindfulness training. But what we did do is we were fortunate to have been the recipient of several $1,000s to send my department through the training specifically. So we had local donors here who believed in us and believed in the mission of becoming Jackson Hole, which was the nonprofit introducing mindfulness, that they gave money specifically towards our department to train all our staff. Now, about 90% of our department has gone through at least 8 hours of mindfulness training over a 2-day period. And then another 10% of those have gone through, you know, upwards of 20 to 80 hours of training. And so we are very fortunate to have a community collaborative cooperation here in our community that allows us to be innovative and to be, as Tony would call it, curious. You know, we want to be, we want to be that department that is out there trying new things and doing new things, but it does not go without a little bit of, you know, you'll always have some pushback. You know, I did have people in our mindfulness training during that 8-hour time, which you got to remember, our instructors were not law enforcement. They were not first responders. And so they're teaching to a room full of cops. And you had some cops in the back room rolling their eyes. And I will tell you that that instructor on that very first day, the first time she did that, she's like, oh my gosh, you guys are going to make me cry, because I feel like I'm not, y'all are just staring at me and there's no conversation. But by the end of the 8 hours, most of the people were engaged. And so I think it's really, really important that you don't come across as it has to be meditation. While that works for some of us in different ways, like I know Tony does it before he goes to bed at night. I happen to do it before I go to bed at night. I try to spend, you know, just a few minutes breathing, and I use the Calm app. We all do different things, but some people do it during the day when they're driving their cars. When you come to a stop sign, you spend 30 seconds just stopping and focusing on like the here and the now and in the moment. And but I think what's really important is you find what works for different people. We have some officers that like jujitsu is their way of mindfulness, right? And that 45 minutes that they spend working out like that is mindful. But what we encourage people to do is when you're trying to be mindful and you're in the moment, like it doesn't have to be for 10 minutes or 15 minutes at a time. It's literally for seconds. And so it's funny because so last night I'm talking to my mom, who's 86 years old, on the phone, and I don't talk much about like what I do at work. And I happened to say that I was giving a presentation on mindfulness, and she's like, what's that? So I explained it to her, and she said, oh, well, you know, I have a hard time focusing when I'm praying. Like sometimes I'll be praying and then I find my mind off wandering, and is that bad? And I'm like, no, that's not bad, Mom, that's normal. But you come back to where you left off in the prayer and kind of start over. But that's a really good example of just, it's okay to wander, but what you need to do is come back. And the benefit of that is, you know, like lifting weights, we have to lift weights, we have to run to become faster. You have to bring your mind back to make to get better at this. And it's okay, baby steps are fine. So lots of growing pains. It's hard to do this kind of presentation in 45 minutes. There's so much to talk about.
Michelle, what you said there is just so important, you know, which is how do you stay present in the moment? I can only imagine this would help with officer safety as well, right? Because when they're intervening with someone, yeah, and I see Tony's head shaking. You guys mind talking about that piece of it? Because, you know, we need to, you know, everybody talks about the why, right? But we're talking about officer safety and officer well-being. And tell me more about that. How could you use this in the moment when you're doing an arrest or an intervention with someone?
Okay. So, you know, one of the things in some of the incidents you see that have made nationwide news is there's no mental break that officers have built into their day-to-day habits. And so you see these incidents where oftentimes officers are reacting, and then the incident's over. And then that everyone comes in, it's like, well, why didn't you change any of your responses? And by building in a daily practice of mindfulness-based attention training, so that practicing the breathing, practicing focusing on the here and now. I personally, in the last year, have used it in two different physical incidents where we had to physically apprehend a suspect. He was fighting, we got him under control, got him cuffed, and then I was able to use that breathing, that habit and that practice of breathing, that practice of getting my brain back to the here and now and out of the reactive state. It has personally given myself the ability to be able to be like, okay, let's slow down in this incident and let's do it this way, rather than continuously reacting to stimuluses that you encounter in a different incident. And so the office, and you are, and as a patrol sergeant, I'm seeing the difference in officers who practice mindfulness-based attention training, their ability to, Tony has a really good word that he uses.
I'm not sure what that one is, but what he's talking about is that I think Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman says it really well, and you're taking the puppy out of it. The puppy's no longer in charge, and the officer's back in control of what's happening. If you look at these guys in a lot of these videos, you can tell through that their physiology is just completely, things have shut down, veins are constricting, blood flow to the brain is not right. You just see it in their eyes, you see it in their actions. And so putting the officer back in charge and taking the puppy out of the equation, I think is what we're talking about.
Yeah, the ability to take that moment by doing the physiological response of forced deep breaths, gives your brain the time to detach from the stimulus and re-engage thinking. And so that's like in a very tactical manifestation of the benefits of these types of programs in our line of work.
And kind of to conclude, I know we're getting short on time, is we definitely don't claim to be the experts on this. And in fact, we know we're not. But what we are really excited about is taking this and trying to introduce and trying to get other first responders to incorporate this and make it not such a stigma to talk about. Like, I mean, obviously, I have lots of goals, and just bringing people knowledgeable about this is one of my goals. I never want to pick up the phone and one of my officers have committed suicide. That's one of one of the things that I think about all the time. And so that's our goal for incorporating this when employees come on, just so that they know that they have the help, and there's different ways of looking at it. We are always happy. I mean, we love talking about this. We all have come from a different perspectives, you know, and have different ways of looking at this. So we are certainly open to questions. If after this, I will put my.
Can I answer two of those questions real quick?
Oh, Jeremiah wants to talk.
There's a question from Lisa. Has it changed use of force in the department? And in the last year, just looking at our use of forces, what it's changed is we still have the frequency, but in combination with pairing our custody and control to a grappling based, it has reduced the propensity of injury to suspects. So our use of forces haven't changed, but what has changed is the propensity of injury to suspects and to officers. So, you know, we can't control whether suspects want to go to jail or not. We can't control whether they're intoxicated or not, but we can control how we get them there. And so that's where we've seen the greatest improvement.
What I put up on the screen now is an email from the fourth person who I told you is part of our team, our mindfulness team, and we're calling it mindfulness, but we're also calling it cops. We're calling it whatever works for people. But this is just an example of what Sergeant Traphagen sent out the other day, and he just sent it to the whole department. And he does this periodically, just to, like once a week or whatever, just to, you know, get people to remind them to just to be in the moment and to think about what they can do to help themselves. So I just thought this was a really good example of this. He sent this out this last week because it's getting colder here and we're not doing the hikes, and a lot of our guys are out hunting right now. So yeah, I just thought I'd put that on there. Any other questions from the group?
Yeah, Michelle, we have one over about turnover and dispatch. And did you notice any kind of change or improvement as well as in the patrol numbers to see how call takers and dispatch are doing? Are they involved in this mindfulness-based training?
So our dispatches is part of our sheriff's office, and they are part of this. And we have, and yeah, Tony can specifically talk about one of our dispatchers that came over to our department, you know, because I just told you they're not part of our department, but asked to be a part of this program. And so
yeah, we've got a lot of the other agencies in our jurisdiction I'm not saying that they're looking to us, but they know that we have something going. So there's recommendations made to our department. We have had not a ton, but a dispatcher come over and go through our 333 protocol with our department. Obviously you want to be confidential, but it led to a referral for counseling, and she is doing wonderful. So and she's very thankful, and it's created a greater bond because it is a different agency that does our dispatch. So it builds those connections and trust as well.
That's awesome. This program sounds really promising, and I am excited that you guys have started this. I don't know any other department that's doing it as far as the departments that I interact with. And I know that there was a question here about corporate mindfulness training in Arizona from Amy. I think that this is a great opportunity as well for you guys to take this on the road, so that way hopefully you guys could share this with other departments. So if anybody's interested in having Michelle and the team come out to be able to speak at your department, please feel free to reach out to them directly. I know you have another slide with your contact information on the next slide, but also you can get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with sergeants as well as chief, and just making sure that we could spread this, because it sounds as though it has good applicability not only to officer health and wellness from a physiological component, as Tony was saying, but also as regarding officer safety in the field, just like Jeremiah was saying. You know, we want to make sure that on these interactions we have with people, that we are able to control ourselves in terms of our breathing, our ability to stay present and get home safe to our families. And I think that that would make it great for everybody. Tony, I see you have something.
Oh, well, you're very perceptive, Dara. One of the things that Michelle mentioned that it really has been huge, and that some people may be concerned with, is a huge amount of our funding has come from the community. And so building a community collaborative effort with business, philanthropists, things like that goes a huge way in making things happen. So if they want ideas on that, we can certainly give them that as well.
And I will say this because I know that we were all involved in this process, but I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that started a process with community collaborations through the CIT programming that you guys had started as well. You had an infrastructure to build even more upon, right? Because you had that connectivity within the community. So I see them as being related. I see them as, you know, having that good community base and support. So, and Jackson Hole is just a fantastic place anyway. So you guys do have a great community.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you guys very much.